Thanks for
Thanks,
everybody for
man.
coming. I think this is an important topic that a lot of times, is only discussed, you know, um, in certain among friends and that sort of thing. And I think that a lot of some of the things that I'm going to talk about and some of the other panelists are going to talk about is some of my experiences, some of their experiences, and maybe that'll kind of help you in some of the things that you guys have experienced. And then, like I said, we'll open it for questions. I'm going to start kind of giving my background, and then maybe Joe and then Robert. Save the best for last, Robert. So tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Kentucky. Maybe some of you maybe have seen me before or heard me talk. I've done some other talks like this before. I see some familiar faces tonight. One of the things I just want to get out of the way is obviously this is going to be, talking about intimacy, sex. We're talking about, relationships and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a safe space to kind of talk about things, but, no making fun of anybody else or ridiculing anybody else. I'm sure nobody will do that, but I just want to get some of the ground rules out of the way. But as far as myself, I really, as far as intimacy and sex, I always made the joke sometimes that I was still waiting at this age for my parents to give me the talk. So I kind of had to kind of learn on my own about, sex and intimacy and that sort of thing. And so high school, or even junior high, I think was my first experience with, I think we all did, as far as discovering the opposite sex or girls or whoever you're attracted to. And so it's an awkward moment, an awkward time in your life, even if you don't have a disability or have spina bifida. But I think with the other challenges that I had, just with the confidence level, I think that's a lot of it. Just being able to, how to talk to the opposite sex, how do you even get a conversation started, much less have a relationship with somebody, or even start a relationship with someone. And so I learned from a lot of mistakes. A lot of it was fear of, am I even, based on the fact that I have spina bifida, am I even attractive to someone? And so, one of the things that I've learned as I've gotten older is that one of the most important parts of that is to be yourself, because people see through that, but also it's part of that. You are putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, and so it's always uncomfortable. But never really, and I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I had a couple of girls that I dated in high school, but one time there was even I think that I thought I was dating a girl, but then was she dating me because she felt sorry for me and she wanted to pretend like she was my girlfriend so I wouldn't feel bad about myself? And how does that make me feel when you find, and that actually happened to me, that when you find out that's the reason why somebody is with you, is that's even more devastating later. So that was kind of my first experience. I didn't have a intimate as far as sex with my first time I had sex was after high school. I was almost 20 years old, so I was older. And I always tell people it wasn't to lack of trying, as far as, being intimate. But I think just being in a situation like in the high school setting where I was the only one that I remember that had a disability that you could see, that you were that awkward person out. You were that one that a girl didn't want to be seen with, or a girl, didn't want to be that girl that has a relationship with him. And so it was really awkward for me. Even the first time that I had a sexual experience, it was really awkward because it was that person's first time too. And so we both didn't know what the hell we were doing. So, in some ways it was kind of, looking back on it, maybe an advantage. But as I got older, I worried less about, we all have, or a lot of us with spina bifida have different issues, like with bowel and bladder and function and that sort of thing. And so what I did learn as I got older is that's important, and it's an important part of everybody's life because everybody likes that intimacy part. But I think that stuff can be worked out. I learned that later on, that you can work out the details of how you're going to be sexually active with someone. But I think having that connection with someone is the more important piece. And I learned that over the years. And then I always joke too that because I'm older, I'm 54, almost 55 year old with spina bifida, that we didn't have things like social media whenever I was in high school and junior high, and being able to, you can almost get to know someone sort of even before you've even spoken to them now. And so I think that can be good and bad, I think, as far as trying to develop a relationship, because sometimes you never know who is on the other end of that, who you're speaking to. And so just for, the fear of, because I don't have the ability to do some of the, when you're in junior high or in high school, I would look at, like porn magazines and that sort of thing. And they're like, well, I'm not going to be able to do stuff like that because I have spina bifida. Or is that going to be something that's going to be a put off to any girl that I'm with? And so the fear of that, the function part of it and the bowel and bladder, I think that was a lot of things that were always on my mind. But once I made a connection with someone, that seemed less important. And so, and sometimes, as Julie used to say, and pardon my language, she'd say, "What shit happens," and so stuff like that is like, it's interesting. The first time that happened to me, the person that I was with like, it's not a big deal. And then from there, it's more of a confidence builder. And so I just think that from my learning experience and some of the things that I've learned and what Joe has experienced and what Robert experienced, how we can kind of share our personal stories to kind of say you're not alone in a lot of the things that I used to think that the things that I was going through as a teenager, that I was the only one that went through that. And I know now that I wasn't, and even as an adult. And so that's one of the most important things I would like for people to get from what I talk about, is that some of those experiences are probably similar to a lot of what you guys have experienced. And I stumbled and had to learn on my own. And I hope that some of the things that we talk about tonight can help you guys now and in the future. So Joe, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little bit of background.
Sure. Hey, fellas. My name is Joe. I am 50 years old. I live on Long Island in New York. Spina bifida, hydrocephalus. When I was growing up, my parents didn't know that I was going to have spina bifida at birth. So it was a real big rush to figure out what I'm going to be able to do and what I'm not going to be able to do. So through school, wearing diapers, because of the, neurogenic bladder and the neurogenic bowels, girls honestly didn't want anything to do with me. I had my first sexual experience in college. But I had an accident and it turned her off, and it kind of shattered my confidence. I kind of figured on my own a little bit, quite honestly, because of the neurogenic bowel and bladder, maybe I should be changing my diet a little bit or drinking less or whatever. I was trying different things because I didn't want to be in that position ever again. A little bit later into college, I started playing wheelchair basketball, and I met a woman that actually worked at the college, a little bit older than me, and we started dating. And like Matt said, things went well, and that was a great confidence booster for me, because she didn't care, every now and again if something happened. It wasn't there all the time. At that point, I was trying to control things, as best I could. And she was great. She was great in, helping me, achieve that confidence that, a guy with a disability, can have a somewhat normal life. I had a couple of girlfriends here or there after that. And again, that bowel and the bladder thing always got in the way. There are some people that, were okay with it up to a certain point, and then they leave. I had one young lady tell me, and again, I'm 50, so this is, 20, 25, 30 years. I had one young lady tell me that she's only with me because she wanted to be with a guy with a disability, and she wanted to show her friends that she can make a guy with a disability, get an erection. All right. So I got, I went through that. About 10 years ago, I met a person I married. And again, she happened to be a nurse, so she knew all about the ins and outs of spina bifida and, all this stuff. But it actually wore thin on her. 10 years later, this past July, she left me for an able-bodied guy. So, there's always those pitfalls that, you have these confidence boosters, and, you do things a certain way. But, experience to experience, it changes, and you can't fault them. All right. You can't fault yourself. You just got to kind of pick yourself up and move on. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Thanks, Joe, for sharing that experience. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
You weren't
no.
finished.
Okay.
Thanks again, Joe and Robert.
Okay. I guess I was just lucky because I never had a mishap during intimacy. But I have had 3 issues so far as that is concerned. And I'll go from the most minor one to what for me is has been the more serious one. By the way, the other guys gave their age. I'm 75 years young. The first issue was positioning. It was hard for me to get into a position in which I could give my partner a deep penetration. We finally helped that quite a bit with a pillow under her, with a disposable underpad on top of the pillow to prevent the pillow from being stained. So that helped a good bit. The other issue was that when my wife and I were ready, we had worked a few years, ready to start a family, she didn't seem to get pregnant. And so her gynecologist said, well, we can give you some fertility drugs. And she said, well, Robert said, if you suggested that, let him get tested for a sperm count first to see if which one of us it is. And sure enough, it was me. I just had that hunch. Had a low sperm count and even lower number of sperm that were considered motile. And the reason that we think that happened, this was in 1974. that I had the test. And in the early 70s, I had a series of urinary tract infections, hard to overcome them. And we think that probably those infections killed off the sperm. If that is not the cause, then maybe I just didn't produce much sperm to begin with. Maybe although the ejaculant was there, that the sperm were not contained within. And then the third issue for me regarding intimacy is that male opals, which is my euphemism for erectile dysfunction, came rather early. By the early 50s, sorry about the phone, let me get rid of that. Sorry, folks, I brought it in here with me so that I could cut it off. In the early 50s, I was having some difficulty. And over the years, I've tried all of the meds for that condition. None of them worked, including the penile injections. Not a fun thing to do, stick your needle in that, but I tried it, but that didn't help. So my sexual dysfunction physician at Duke University Medical Center said, well, the only thing left is a penile implant. And he said, to be honest, you would be at a little higher risk for infections because you have a history of infections. So my position was I was not going to risk that unless I got into a relationship in which the other person was saying, I would love to be your permanent partner, but only if I can have a deep penetration. Well, for the past 17 years, I've been in a relationship with a woman who is a widow. And of course, she had already had the one child that she wanted. And so I told her I was willing to undergo that surgery. She said, Robert, don't do it. She said, if my husband were alive now, he died of a heart attack. If he were alive now, I would discourage him from doing that. And he was starting to have a little bit of ED at the age of 50 when he died from a heart attack. So those are the three issues regarding sexuality that I've experienced in my 75 years. That does not mean that you're going to have one of those, two of those, or all three of those. We're all different. But I will say, don't be surprised if the menopause comes earlier than you would like. But medical science is doing all kinds of things. There may be new medications available. So that's my spiel. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Robert. And you can see how all three of us have different stories. You know, it's not, I always tell people, and it seems to be a corny saying, that it's not really what's down there, it's what's up here.
Yes.
And so even talking to somebody that you're attracted to, how do you do that in a way where you bring yourself out, but also your true self out, but also don't scare them off or say something inappropriate. It's something that I don't want to say it's a technique, but it's just being yourself. And I think people need to look past the spina bifida and get to know you. And I think once they do that, then that's where that important connection to relationships comes in. And the other stuff that Robert and Joe and I talked about kind of is secondary, just like Robert had talked about with his wife now. So that's kind of our kind of, the short versions of our stories. And it's interesting how when I hear Joe and Robert talk, how we have some interconnectedness about some of the things that we've experienced, and a lot of us here do. And what I would like to do is, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll be glad to answer them as they come in. And so, like I said, it's a safe space. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I think that those are important, because not just us three, our stories are not important, but everybody's story in here is important, or you wouldn't be here. And so we would like to hear from some of you as far as some of your personal experiences. It's interesting too that, I'm not currently married, was in a relationship with someone for about 10 years. We're still friends, but it wasn't, where there's always some factors that have figured into that. And I'm in a committed relationship now, and she's an able-bodied person. And so I think that it's working well. I always tell people that, at this age, I'm old and set my ways, and who knows if I'll settle down with one person. But everybody has their different situations. So it just gave me the confidence. And even with, even if your functions or function levels are different, there still can be intimacy there with your partner. And that's one of the things that we bring to this, is that, if you have ED or if you have the bowel and bladder, I think that that's important. I have a couple of people have made some comments. It looks like Jacob, it's expensive, I know, for some of the meds, that help with ED. And so, that's always been a problem too. If you want to try different areas to improve your sex life, and it requires some type of medication or some kind of device, but your insurance won't pay for it, how do you improve that part of your life? It's really sad to me that an insurance company determines whether or not you can explore other areas in your sex life. But I think that's where you kind of come in, where you think creatively, just like Robert was talking about the towel and those positions. Those are some of the things that you figure out through experimentation on what works and what doesn't, and how to pleasure the other person, even though you're in that. Even though you're an individual with spina bifida and we have different levels, I think it's important to keep that in mind.
How about Jacob? You talk to your urologist. I actually did this, and maybe they have free samples.
Okay.
I know
Okay.
things are expensive. Everybody has different kinds of insurance. Some of us, maybe don't have insurance. Medical care is exorbitant. Give it a shot. Talk to your urologist. They give free samples all the time of all sorts of stuff.
And even through like the National Spina Bifida, they may have some resources.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, but I would, I was comfortable doing it with my, asking my urologist. I've had him, for a long time. Give it a shot. Yeah.
Rocky brings up a good point too.
About the prescriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I was fortunate enough that I have, pretty much full function, can ejaculate and that sort of thing. And so I was lucky in that respect, but it didn't, when I was younger, didn't ease my fear of, am I going to be able to do things right or to be able to please the person that I'm with? So, that wasn't anything that was a confidence booster for me at first, because I really didn't have those talks whenever I was in high school, even after high school, of people with spina bifida and what their function level was. All the only connection that I have is, when I got involved with sports, and a bunch of guys and gals that I played sports with were spinal cord injury, few were spina bifida, and kind of how they, just learning through their talking to them, how they handled those situations. And that kind of put me at ease. And that's why I think things like this are really important. Events like this is because we can share experiences and learn from other people's experiences on what they went through. And to know that you're not alone in some of the things that you've experienced with the opposite sex. Like I said, these days with social media, people can communicate with each other without even meeting, but then there's dangers in that as well. And so we just need to be careful. So I just think that as far as my experience and with Joe's experience, is that if you're in a relationship and that relationship comes to end, you can't put all the blame on yourself. I think that's an important thing. Is it because I have spina bifida did that person leave, or it was that person's insecurities is the reason why that person is no longer in the relationship? And so I've experienced that. It's interesting. I had a situation where I was dating a young lady that had spina bifida. She was able to walk, and she said that she couldn't date me anymore because it reminded her that she had spina bifida, because she didn't want to be associated with the spina bifida community. It was really an interesting take that, her parents mainstreamed her so much, and she had that pride that she wanted to be as normal as possible. So dating someone with spina bifida reminded her that she had the same condition. And so it's so interesting that I had that experience as well. And so you learn from these types of experiences that once you think you've seen it all, then you haven't. Just like the girl pretending like, yes, I'm your girlfriend, but she wasn't really my girlfriend. She was just, it was more of a pity thing. And that makes you feel even worse once you find that out. And so it was just devastating to me. And then when I actually had a girl that was attracted to me, I met her through my mother's work, and we went on dates, and she was the first person that I was intimate with. We were both scared to death. So, I didn't know what I was doing. But I learned that it was going to be okay. Even, if stuff happens, I had trouble at first getting an erection. I was so nervous, and then things just kind of, worked from there. And, that's something that we all may have experienced or will experience, but don't think it's a reflection on you. It's just something that happens.
The first couple of girlfriends I had, through college, after college, I always wanted to be upfront with them. So there's no surprises. There's no, I wanted them to be with me for me, not because I have a disability or or chase them away because I had a disability. And a few times the women that I was dating, had all sorts of questions, and I answered them very honestly, and that helped actually. Right, because it showed that I wasn't hiding. It showed that this is something that happened at birth, and it's not going to change. Right, and that gave me even more confidence to be able to talk to women about my situation, because I've had a lot of success with the conversation part, of what spina bifida is and what does it entail, and what happens if.
We used to I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Murderball, but we used to do the same thing. We used to joke that once you're out with somebody and they're talking to a girl, and then the question comes up in a roundabout way, whether or not you can have sex, that you know that they're interested. It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So I may mispronounce your name, but Murgle, Joseph, she brings up an interesting point. As far as a sex therapist, I think it's more of a finding a mentor, like one of us or people that have been through it, for your son once he gets to that point. Obviously, knowing from a medical professional, at that, when they start to get to that age where they're interested in girls, as far as the catheterization and the bowel management and that sort of thing, and the medical piece of it, but also having somebody like one of us to talk to about their experiences, I think is something that I'm always willing to do, and so I know a lot of us are willing to do, as far as talking about our own experiences. The Spina Bifida Association may have some resources for this area. I know it's a limited area. It's interesting. When I went to a session at when we had the National Spina Bifida Conference, and there was a session on sex education, and it was a medical doctor, and she was talking about all these medical terms and had diagrams, and some of the kids in the room were just like, their eyes were glassed over, because that wasn't what I was expecting of the session. It was good, informative. And I said to myself, you know what, I can do a session like this, but give it down to the nitty gritty, dirty, this is what you need to do. And so I've been able to give that information based on my own experiences. So my point is that having people like us to mentor people that have those questions, or kids with spina bifida, when they get to that point, I think is one of the most valuable resources that we could have.
Yeah, it's been my experience, just like adulting with spina bifida. Right, when you're a kid, it's a pediatric problem, so all your pediatric doctors know what the heck they're doing. Once you hit 25, you're in the adult world. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. So I don't care what kind of doctor or therapist you are. It's my opinion, and I'm not a professional.
Right.
It's just my experience that no, then they're not going to know. I think Matt's suggestion of going through SBA resources, as in a mentorship with somebody like ourselves here on this call, whether it's Robert, Matt, myself, or anybody else that has done it. Right, your son is 4 years old. Right, he's got a little bit of time. You're preparing, which is great. But it's going to come to that time where you might not know you might not know the answers, right? And I think a place like SBA would be a help for you.
Right.
Just
networking with others.
A therapist, it's great that they have a piece of paper on the wall, and they charge $500 an hour. But just like any other doctor that we deal with in our adulthood, I mean, quite honestly, I know this is a little bit off topic, but I had a bike accident about 3 weeks ago. I am in the backwoods of Maryland, and I had to go, and I swear to you, I had to go through 6 neurosurgeons before somebody knew what a shunt was. So yeah, you would hope that these medical professionals know what they're doing. They don't.
A shunt's pretty basic.
You would think.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And
luckily, my shunt was not involved. Again, a little bit off topic. I did hit my head. I was bleeding a little bit, so I wanted my shunt checked, and that just started a firestorm.
And it goes back to just being connected to the right people. And, with this topic and the group of folks that are in here, I think just getting connected with us and be glad to answer any questions, or,
Yes,
be that mentor in the future. Because, like Joe was saying, I had a doctor one time just give me a book. I think it was Ann Landers or something,
Mhm.
it's like, well, this is no help. It's like, because he didn't know either, we're not supposed to live old enough to have sex,
Yeah, everybody on this call, we're supposed to be gone, right?
Right. And so we're kind of the experiment, so to speak. But I
Right.
think it goes down to still, what's up here is important, in making that connection with people and just be your true self. I think that's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
But having these kinds of webinars, sessions, talks, whatever you want to call it, I think it's important because we can be those people that other people can rely on for this type of information. If I had somebody like Joe or Robert to talk to whenever I was a preteen, things may have turned out a little bit different for me, probably in a good way, because I just had to figure it out on my own. And so having those types of people to turn to, I think, is important. And the research, we are in the midst right now of research on adults with spina bifida and sexual activity. It's something that's fairly new topic, and so we're the guinea pigs, so to speak, as older adults with spina bifida. It's exciting to me that this has become a important topic within the spina bifida world, because it's important to a lot of us, and that more research is done on how to improve the lives of men with spina bifida, especially in this area. So if I had had this information before,